April 1912. The calendar insists it is spring, though the air near the docks has not entirely agreed yet. Morning settles over Southampton with a restrained politeness, the kind that does not rush anyone, the kind that pretends it has all day. Many listen quietly here, night after night. If this calm travels with you, you may stay. Subscribing keeps this silence alive. Along the quay, a ship waits. Not impatiently, not dramatically. It simply occupies space. A great deal of space, more space than seems necessary, more space than feels reasonable. This is not a ship designed to hurry. It is designed to reassure. From a distance, it resembles a floating neighborhood that has misplaced its street signs. Black hull, white superstructure, clean lines stacked upon clean lines. Everything symmetrical enough to make the eye relax. Nothing sharp, nothing wild. Even the smoke drifting upward behaves itself, rising in tidy columns as though it has been briefed on proper conduct. Around it, people arrive carrying manageable lives, trunks that have been closed carefully, not in a panic, hats placed just so, books selected for long hours of sitting, letters folded and unfolded once more, then tucked away. These are not people expecting transformation. They are not seeking legend. They are expecting passage from one continent to another, from one routine to a slightly different one. There are more than 2,000 of them, though no one here is counting. Numbers matter less than movement today. Families pause for a final adjustment of gloves. Couples exchange brief looks that say, "Yes, this is happening now," without assigning it any deeper meaning. Individuals stand alone, gazing up at the ship, not with awe exactly, but with appraisal, like buyers inspecting a well-made piece of furniture. Solid, expensive, likely to last. The boarding process unfolds with admirable restraint. No running, no shouting, just instructions delivered in practiced tones and followed with polite efficiency. The ship accepts its passengers the way a building accepts tenants, quietly, methodically, without asking who they are or why they've come. Inside, the atmosphere changes immediately. The dockside noise softens, replaced by a controlled hush. Electric lights glow with a confidence that feels almost smug. They do not flicker. They do not apologize. Wood-paneled corridors stretch forward with the steady assurance of something that has been measured twice and cut once, or perhaps measured 3 times, just to be safe. This ship has opinions about comfort, and it enforces them gently. Mahogany railings are smooth under the hand, polished to the point where they reflect not faces but impressions. Brass fixtures gleam without demanding attention. Everything here seems to agree that excess drama would be inappropriate. This is not a place for astonishment. This is a place for settling in. People move through the space with a kind of shared understanding that this is not their home, but it could convincingly pretend to be one for a few days. Footsteps slow. Voices drop a register. Even the most talkative passengers begin to moderate themselves, as though the walls might be listening and prefer calm conversation. Somewhere deep within the ship, engines prepare themselves, not loudly, not theatrically. There is no roar, no announcement, just a low, patient readiness, power held in reserve, strength that does not feel the need to prove itself. Outside, the final lines are loosened. The moment passes almost unnoticed. There is no grand pause, no dramatic countdown. The ship does not lurch forward or make a show of leaving. It simply begins to move so slowly that the shore seems unsure whether it is being abandoned or merely repositioned. England drifts away without protest. Passengers gather along railings, watching buildings recede with polite interest. There is waving, but not much of it. The gestures are economical. No one clings. No one collapses into farewell. This is not a permanent separation. It is a crossing, an interval, something that will be completed and then discussed later over tea. As the ship slides into open water, a curious thing happens. The tension dissolves, not because anything remarkable has occurred, but because nothing has gone wrong. The vessel behaves exactly as promised. It floats, it moves, it does not rattle, groan, or argue with the sea. It gives the impression of having done this before, even though it has not. People begin to relax into the idea that this will be easy. Below decks, cabins wait in orderly rows. Beds remain neatly made. Wash basins gleam under electric light. Doors close with a reassuring weight, the kind that suggests privacy has been thoughtfully considered. This is a ship that believes rest is important, and it would like you to agree. There is something faintly amusing about the confidence of it all, the certainty, the assumption that if every detail has been polished sufficiently, uncertainty itself might feel embarrassed and stay away. Automatic lights, carpeted stairs, furniture heavy enough to feel permanent, as if inconvenience has been formally banned. The passengers accept this arrangement readily. Why wouldn't they? It feels convincing. Everything about the ship suggests reliability, and reliability is comforting, especially when surrounded by water in every direction. People sit, stand, lean, unpack, and begin the slow work of adjusting to a moving world that insists on pretending it is stationary. Somewhere, a steward offers directions that will be immediately forgotten. Somewhere else, a trunk refuses to fit where it is supposed to. These are minor issues already being corrected. The system hums. The process continues. Above all, there is calm, a curated calm, the kind that has been designed, tested, and approved, the kind that makes people believe that the journey ahead will unfold exactly as scheduled, with no surprises worth mentioning. The shoreline becomes smaller. The ship becomes everything. And in this quiet moment, as April light settles over polished wood and orderly decks, no one feels the need to mark history. No one feels watched by the future. This is simply a departure, a well-appointed one, a comfortable one, a departure that intends, very confidently, to arrive. The ship continues forward, steady and composed, carrying its passengers into open water with the soft assurance of something that expects to be trusted and, for now, is. Second-class cabins. Second class does not announce itself. It does not need to. It exists in that quiet middle ground where things are meant to work without commentary. The corridor outside the cabin is wide enough to pass another person without negotiation. The floor does not creak dramatically. The walls do not lean in. Everything has been arranged to suggest that inconvenience has been politely discouraged. The cabin door opens with a solid, confident sound, not heavy enough to feel theatrical, not light enough to feel temporary. It closes behind you with a soft finality, as if to say that for now this is your portion of the ship, and it will mind its manners. Inside, the room waits patiently. The bed is made of real wood, not something pretending to be wood. It has weight, it has intention. the kind of bed that does not squeak when you sit down and does not complain when you shift your position. The mattress is firm in a reassuring way, suggesting that rest is expected to be taken seriously here. The sheets are white, pressed flat, stretched tight enough that they make a faint sound when you touch them. Not luxurious in the theatrical sense, just clean, purposeful, honest. This is not a room trying to impress anyone. It is a room trying to function. Light fills the space evenly. Electric light, steady and obedient. When the door opens, it appears without being summoned. When the door closes, it withdraws quietly, like a servant who knows exactly when to leave the room. There is something faintly magical about it, though no one says that out loud. People test it once or twice, opening and closing the door with the mild curiosity of someone poking at a well-trained animal. It never fails, which frankly feels a little smug. The walls are painted in light tones, clean and reflective without being sterile. They make the space feel larger than it is, though it is not small to begin with. There is room to stand without turning sideways, room to open a case without apologizing, room to exist without constantly negotiating with furniture. A wash basin is built directly into a small dressing table, a practical decision disguised as elegance. The mirror above it reflects a version of you that already looks more rested than expected. Storage shelves line the wall, deep enough to hold the necessary objects of a journey without demanding precision. Nothing rattles when the ship moves. Nothing slides unexpectedly. The room seems quietly pleased with itself. There is another bed across the cabin. Your roommate occupies it in a way that suggests he has been here for hours, even if it has only been minutes. He is sitting upright, a book open in his hands, the spine already broken in with familiarity. He does not look up immediately. Not because he is rude, but because the book has his attention and the room seems to respect that. This is the sort of shared space that does not require negotiation. No declarations, no awkward introductions. Two people have been placed together by circumstance, and both appear content to let that be enough. Words will come later if needed. Silence is acceptable currency here. You take in the details slowly. A small wardrobe stands against the wall, its doors swinging smoothly on well-oiled hinges, hooks for coats, space for folded clothes. It closes with a soft click, not a bang. The floor beneath your feet is covered with linoleum tiles, patterned in warm tones that manage to feel both practical and oddly comforting. They are easy to clean. They are also pleasant to look at. Someone cared about that. This cabin belongs firmly in the early 20th century's idea of the future. A future where technology exists not to dazzle, but to remove friction. Automatic lights, indoor plumbing, furniture arranged for efficiency rather than ceremony. It is modern in the way that feels calm, not aggressive. There is a faint vibration beneath everything, so faint it barely registers unless you think about it. The engines far below are already at work, pushing thousands of tons of steel through the water without raising their voice. The sound is more presence than noise, a steady reassurance that the ship is doing what ships are meant to do. Your roommate turns a page. The sound is soft, paper brushing paper, the most domestic of noises. It does more to make the room feel settled than any decorative flourish could. Someone is reading, which means time is already slowing down. You set your case down and notice how easily It fits into the space, no rearranging required, no furniture pushed aside. The designers of this cabin appear to have anticipated human behavior with surprising accuracy. People will arrive tired. People will bring too much. People will want things to fit without argument. The room obliges. Second class exists in a curious position aboard the ship. It is not trying to rival the extravagance above it. It is not apologizing for the simplicity below it. It occupies a careful middle where expectations are met, consistently enough that they stop being discussed. There is a quiet humor in that. You sit on the edge of the bed. It does not wobble. You lie back briefly, testing the mattress, and find that it holds you without swallowing you. You could sleep here easily, not because it feels indulgent, but because it feels correct. Across the room, your roommate adjusts his posture slightly, then returns to his book. No comment, no curiosity, just coexistence. This is what sharing space looks like when no one is trying to dominate it. You splash water on your face at the basin. The tap responds immediately as though it has been waiting. The water is cold, bracing in a way that reminds you you are still awake. You dry your hands on a towel that is thick enough to feel reassuring, but not thick enough to feel precious. Everything here has been calibrated for use, not admiration. The light flickers off as you step away from the door, then on again when you move back. It is reliable to the point of comedy. You briefly wonder how many people will test it over the course of the voyage, opening and closing doors with mild fascination, convinced they have discovered a small miracle. Eventually, everyone stops testing it. Reliability has that effect. Outside the cabin, footsteps pass. A muffled voice, somewhere nearby a steward's cart, rolls gently along the corridor. The sounds are distant, controlled, never intrusive. The ship absorbs noise the way thick carpet absorbs sound in a well-appointed house. You unpack slowly. There is no rush, no sense that time needs to be filled with activity. This is not a hotel stay measured in nights. This is a passage measured in days where repetition is expected and welcomed. You place books on a shelf, fold clothes into the wardrobe, arrange small personal items on the dressing table. Each action anchors you a little more firmly in the space. The cabin begins to feel less like accommodation and more like territory. Your roommate finally looks up and nods once, a brief acknowledgement, enough to establish presence, not enough to demand conversation. You return the nod, a small exchange that says everything necessary. Silence returns, unbroken and comfortable. Second-class cabins are designed for this exact rhythm: arrival, adjustment, quiet coexistence. They assume that most people do not want constant stimulation. They assume that privacy can be shared without ceremony. They assume that comfort, when delivered consistently, does not need to be advertised. There is something faintly ironic about how well this works. For all the talk of grandeur and scale, this small room is where the ship makes its most convincing argument, not through spectacle, but through absence. Absence of discomfort, absence of uncertainty, absence of the feeling that something has been overlooked. You lie back again, this time fully, and let the steady hum of the ship settle into your body. The motion is subtle, almost imagined, just enough to remind you that the world outside this cabin is moving, even if everything inside feels still. Your roommate turns another page. The light hums softly. The door remains closed. For now, there is nowhere else you need to be. Second class does not promise transformation. It promises continuity, a familiar rhythm carried gently across an unfamiliar distance. And in this cabin, with its solid bed and obedient lights and shared silence, that promise feels entirely believable. You close your eyes for a moment. Not to sleep, just to rest in the idea that this space will hold you exactly as it is until you decide otherwise. Morning at sea. Morning on the ship does not arrive with enthusiasm. It does not fling open doors or announce itself with bells. It seeps in, quietly, carefully, as though it understands that most people aboard are still negotiating with sleep and would prefer not to be rushed into consciousness. The corridor outside the cabin is calm in a way that feels deliberate, the kind of calm that has been rehearsed. Footsteps are softened by linoleum and carpet. Doors open and close with controlled restraint. Even the air seems to move slowly, drifting rather than circulating, carrying with it a mixture of polished wood, faint soap, and something cooler beneath it all. Salt, sea air. A reminder, subtle but persistent, that the walls surrounding you are floating. A steward passes by with a stack of folded towels balanced neatly on his arm. He walks as though speed would be impolite. His uniform is crisp, his movements economical. He nods when he sees you, not because he knows you, but because nodding is part of how this place functions. Small acknowledgments, exchanged constantly, like punctuation in a sentence that never quite ends. The ship is awake before most of its passengers, but it does not advertise this fact. Somewhere below, kitchens are already active. Somewhere deeper still, engines have been working without pause through the night. None of this is visible. None of it needs to be. Morning here is designed to feel effortless, as though the day has arranged itself while everyone was asleep. Light filters in through portholes along the corridor, pale and indirect. The sun has risen technically, but it has not yet committed to the idea. Outside, the ocean is gray, layered, unbothered by schedules. Inside, electric lights remain on, not because they are needed, but because consistency is comforting. The ship does not make passengers choose between natural and artificial light. It offers both and lets them coexist without argument. You walk slowly, partly out of courtesy to the hour, partly because there is no incentive to hurry. The floor beneath your feet feels solid, too solid almost. There is no sway to compensate for, no lurch to anticipate. If you were blindfolded, you might believe you were in a building constructed very close to the sea, rather than on something moving steadily through it. That, perhaps, is the ship's greatest trick. The engines speak only if you listen for them. A low, continuous sound beneath the floorboards, more vibration than noise. It does not rise or fall. It does not fluctuate with mood. It simply exists, an even pulse that could almost be mistaken for silence if you weren't paying attention. The kind of sound that makes people feel safe without quite knowing why. This is not the sound of speed. It is the sound of confidence. A door opens somewhere behind you. A man steps into the corridor, adjusting his jacket with the careful movements of someone who has not fully decided whether he is awake yet. He glances around, orienting himself, then proceeds in the opposite direction. No greeting, no exchange. Morning does not require conversation. Presence is sufficient. Further along, a cleaning cart stands quietly to one side, as if aware that it should not block anyone's path. Bottles arranged neatly, cloths folded with geometric precision, everything in its place, waiting to be used without drawing attention to itself. The ship prefers its labor invisible. The smell of wood grows stronger as you pass through a section of corridor lined with darker paneling, mahogany polished so thoroughly that it reflects light in softened, distorted shapes. The scent is warm, steady, familiar. It suggests libraries and studies and rooms meant for thinking slowly. Combined with the faint salt of the sea air, it creates an atmosphere that feels both grounded and transient. A strange combination, but a successful one. Windows offer glimpses of the water outside, not dramatic vistas, just water, endless, textured, indifferent. The ship cuts through it without effort, leaving only a suggestion of disturbance behind. The horizon is low, understated, no cliffs, no land. Just the quiet agreement between vessel and sea that this arrangement will continue for now. You notice how few people are awake. Those who tend to move with purpose but not urgency. A woman walks toward the staircase, her steps measured, her posture relaxed. A man stands near a window, hands clasped behind his back, staring outward as though the ocean has just told him something important. It probably hasn't. The ocean is not known for explanations, but the silence encourages interpretation anyway. A steward emerges from a doorway carrying a tray. Cups clink softly, muffled by cloth. He pauses to let someone pass, then continues on his way. There is choreography here, though no one would call it that. Everyone seems to know when to move and when to wait. The ship trains people quickly. As you make your way forward, the corridor curves gently, revealing more of the ship's interior. Staircases appear and disappear, branching off into spaces you have not yet explored. They look identical enough to be confusing, yet distinct enough that you feel confident you could find your way back. Eventually, perhaps with one or two wrong turns. The ship allows for mild disorientation. It considers this part of the experience. The temperature is steady, not warm, not cold, carefully managed. Somewhere behind the walls, systems adjust themselves continuously, making small corrections that no one notices. Eat where it is needed, ventilation where it is not, comfort delivered quietly, without commentary. You pause near a window and place your hand against the glass. It is cool to the touch, solid, reliable. Beyond it, the water slides past at a pace that suggests determination rather than haste. The ship does not race. It proceeds. There is a faint humor in how seriously the ship takes its own stability. So much effort devoted to making motion feel like stillness. So much engineering invested in the idea that passengers should not be reminded too often that they are crossing an ocean. As if the sea were an inconvenience to be managed, rather than the very reason this place exists. A distant sound drifts through the corridor. Not music yet, just the suggestion of activity. Cutlery being set down, doors opening somewhere far away, morning assembling itself piece by piece. You continue walking. The corridor seems longer than it was yesterday, or perhaps you are simply more aware of it now. Details emerge that you did not notice before. The pattern in the floor tiles, the way light pools at intersections. The subtle variations in paneling where one section ends and another begins. This is a space meant to be lived in temporarily, but it has been designed with the care of something permanent. That, too, feels faintly ironic. Outside, the sea remains unchanged. Inside, the ship hums along, adjusting and compensating and smoothing out any hint of disruption. The contrast is almost amusing. Nature doing what it does without explanation. Engineering responding with meticulous precision. A steward greets another steward quietly. A brief exchange, a nod, a shared understanding. They move on, already focused on whatever comes next. Their morning has been going on for hours. You become aware of the rhythm of the ship in a new way, not through movement, but through repetition. The repeated passing of doors, the repeated sound of footsteps, the repeated pattern of light and shadow along the corridor. It creates a sense of continuity, as though time itself has adopted a slower pace to match the vessel's progress. Morning at sea is not about beginnings, it is about continuation. The ship did not stop overnight. It did not pause to reset. It simply carried on, and now morning has arrived to find it exactly where it expected to be, doing exactly what it promised. You turn back toward your cabin eventually, not because there is nowhere else to go, but because there is no need to go anywhere yet. Breakfast will happen when it happens. The day will unfold in its own time. For now, the corridor is enough. As you walk, the sound of the engines remains constant, that low, dependable presence beneath your feet. It does not change to match your pace. It does not respond to your attention. It simply continues, indifferent but reliable. There is comfort in that. Morning on the ship does not demand anything from you. It does not ask you to be productive or alert or inspired. It allows you to exist quietly within its systems, to observe without participating, to move without destination. The corridor leads you back to familiar doors, familiar spaces, familiar silence. Behind those doors, people are waking slowly, stretching, sitting up, reorienting themselves to a world that moves even when they do not. Ahead of those doors, the ship moves steadily onward, carrying everyone toward the day without insisting that anyone notice. And beneath it all, the engines continue their calm, unbroken rhythm, reminding you not loudly, not urgently, but persistently that motion does not always need to feel like motion to be real. The library and the music. The library does not announce itself loudly. It does not hang banners or produce signs large enough to rescue the lost. It simply exists where it has been placed, waiting for passengers who have either learned the ship's logic or stumbled upon it by accident and decided to stay. Once you know the way, it feels obvious. Before that, it feels like a quiet reward for paying attention. The entrance opens into a space that immediately lowers the volume of the world. Green armchairs sit in careful arrangements, angled toward one another just enough to allow conversation, but not so much that silence feels awkward. Their fabric absorbs sound generously, as if they were designed with secrets in mind. Mahogany tables stand nearby, polished to a dull glow rather than a shine. Practical surfaces meant for books, letters, and cups that will inevitably leave faint rings behind. No one seems concerned about those rings. They are expected. Proof of use. Along the forward wall, bookcases stretch wide and tall, their shelves protected by glass doors that reflect the room back at itself. The effect is subtle but strangely satisfying, doubling the sense of space without actually increasing it. The books inside are arranged with quiet discipline, Travel narratives, novels, histories, biographies. Nothing too radical, nothing that might upset digestion or sleep. This is a collection chosen for endurance rather than excitement. A steward stands nearby, not guarding the books so much as supervising their circulation. He hands volumes to passengers with the calm efficiency of someone distributing necessities rather than privileges. Names are noted, titles recorded, everything accounted for. The system is reassuringly bureaucratic. You notice how people move differently here. Steps slow, shoulders drop, voices soften automatically without instruction. Even those who enter with purpose looking for a specific title, a desk by the window, a place to write seem to adjust their tempo within a few seconds. The room does not enforce silence. It makes noise feel unnecessary. Light filters in through tall windows, muted by overcast skies. The ocean outside provides a steady, unremarkable backdrop. Gray water sliding past. No drama, no interruptions. Inside, electric lamps remain lit, their warm glow blending with the daylight rather than competing with it. The effect is timeless. Morning or afternoon becomes irrelevant once you settle into a chair. People choose seats carefully, though no one admits this. Near windows, for those who like to look outward while pretending to read. Toward the center for those who want to disappear into pages without distraction. At desks, for those attempting letters they may or may not finish. Everyone negotiates their own version of solitude. And then, drifting in from the corridor, the music begins. Not abruptly, not as a performance demanding attention. It arrives the way a memory does, halfway formed. A string ensemble, small and precise, playing with the confidence of musicians who understand their role, is to enhance rather than dominate. The melody moves lightly through the hallway, slipping past doorways and corners, settling briefly in the library before continuing on. The sound does not interrupt reading. It does not insist on applause. It simply coexists. Passengers near the entrance pause. Some lean against the wall. Others stand with hands clasped behind their backs, listening without expression. No one rushes forward. No one claps between movements. This is not a concert. This is atmosphere, carefully applied. The musicians remain just out of sight, positioned in the corridor where the acoustics behave themselves. Violins speak clearly. A cello anchors the sound without weight. The piece is familiar enough to be comforting, but not familiar enough to provoke humming. It occupies that perfect middle space where recognition fades into acceptance. Inside the library, the reaction is subtle. A man turns a page slightly slower than before. A woman pauses her writing, pen hovering, as if waiting for the phrase to resolve before continuing. Someone exhales without realizing they were holding their breath. No one looks annoyed. No one looks thrilled. The music has achieved its goal. There is a quiet irony in this arrangement. A ship capable of carrying thousands of people across an ocean chooses to provide live music not as spectacle but as background. Musicians hired not to impress but to reassure. Their presence is not announced in the daily schedule. They appear when they are needed and vanish when they are not. You glance toward the glass-fronted bookcases again and notice your reflection layered over the spines of books. History, fiction, travel, all of it stacked neatly behind your own face. It creates the faint illusion that you are already part of the collection, another volume temporarily shelved in this floating library. You select a book. The steward notes the title with a small nod and hands it to you as though he has been expecting this moment. The weight of it feels right. Not heavy, not flimsy. You choose a chair near the window and settle in, the fabric yielding without complaint. The music continues. Out in the corridor, the ensemble shifts to another piece, equally restrained. The transition is smooth enough that some listeners do not notice it has happened. Others recognize the change and smile faintly, pleased by the subtlety. No one comments. Commentary would break the spell. There is something faintly amusing about how carefully controlled all of this is. The chairs, the books, the music, the light, each element calibrated to prevent excess. No strong emotions, no sharp edges. Even leisure here has been engineered for balance. You begin to read. The words come easily, not because the writing is exceptional, but because the environment supports attention. The ship seems to approve of this activity. The gentle hum beneath the floor reinforces concentration. The music drifts by without tugging too hard at your awareness. The chair holds you in exactly the right way. Time behaves strangely. Minutes expand, pages turn, the outside world reduces itself to background texture. Somewhere someone clears their throat. Somewhere else, a chair shifts. These sounds register briefly and then dissolve back into the larger quiet. A small group has gathered in the corridor now, drawn by the music. They stand at respectful distances from one another, leaving room for imagined movement. Hands fold, hats remain on heads. This is listening without ownership, appreciation without possession. The musicians play on, unhurried. They are dressed neatly, though not extravagantly. Their instruments show signs of use. This is not their first crossing, not their first audience. They perform with the calm assurance of people who understand that their work matters but does not need to be defended. Tips will be collected later, discreetly. A small satchel passed quietly among those who wish to contribute. No pressure, no announcement. Appreciation expressed economically. Back in the library, someone closes a book and rises carefully, as though standing too quickly might disturb the equilibrium. Another passenger takes their seat moments later, the chair accepting a new occupant without fuss. You glance at the clock. It has moved further than expected. This surprises you briefly, then stops mattering. The ship has removed urgency from the equation. Here, reading is not something to be fit between obligations. It is the obligation. The music fades. Not suddenly, it retreats piece by piece until only the memory of it remains. The corridor returns to its usual hush. The library breathes differently now, slightly deeper, as if acknowledging the absence and settling again. No one reacts overtly. No sighs of disappointment. No applause. The musicians have done their work and moved on. The space remains intact. You continue reading. Outside the window, the ocean remains unchanged, gray, endless, patient. The ship slides forward, with its usual composure, carrying this pocket of quiet along with it. In this room, surrounded by books you did not bring and music you did not request, it becomes easy to forget that you are in transit at all. The library does not feel temporary. It feels installed, rooted, as if it has always existed and will continue to exist long after you leave. Of course, that is not true, but the illusion holds. And for now, that is enough. The second-class dining room. The second-class dining room reveals itself gradually, as if it prefers to be discovered rather than announced. You approach it along corridors that grow subtly brighter, the air warming just enough to suggest that something social is about to occur. Then the doors open, and the space expands in a way that feels both generous and controlled. It is large, certainly, but not theatrical. The ceiling rises high above the room, lending it a sense of calm authority rather than grandeur. Nothing presses down on you here. The height allows sound to drift upward and disperse, leaving conversation intact but never crowded. The room breathes easily. Light enters through round windows set neatly along the walls. Portholes technically, though here they feel less nautical and more architectural. Sunlight filters in at gentle angles, sliding across white tablecloths and polished wood, creating soft pools of brightness that move slowly as the ship advances. No harsh glare, no sharp contrasts, just a steady illumination that makes everything look composed. Long tables stretch the length of the room, aligned with careful symmetry. White cloths cover them completely, pulled tight and secured as though wrinkles have been formally discouraged. The cloths are clean, crisp, and unpretentious. They do not billow or shimmer. They remain exactly where they have been placed, suggesting cooperation rather than flair. Chairs line both sides, solid and comfortable, arranged at precise intervals. Enough space to sit without brushing elbows, enough distance to maintain the polite fiction of privacy. People take their seats without hesitation, guided more by habit than instruction. The room seems to tell you where to go, and most people are content to listen. The first thing you notice is the absence of urgency. There is no rushing, no hurried glances toward the doors, no sense that anyone might miss something important if they are not seated immediately. The meal will begin when it is meant to. Everyone knows this. The ship has earned that trust already. Stewards move through the room with practiced ease, adjusting chairs, placing cutlery, straightening napkins that are already straight. Their presence is steady but unobtrusive. They speak softly, often without words at all. A nod, a gesture, a brief pause to allow someone to pass. The choreography is flawless precisely because it draws no attention to itself. The menus are modest, printed neatly, offering choices that sound familiar rather than ambitious. This is food meant to satisfy, not surprise. Soup that behaves as soup should. Bread that arrives warm and remains obediently warm. Dishes arranged to be eaten without strategy. When the meal begins, it does so evenly. Plates arrive in unison, or nearly so, carried with careful balance and set down quietly. There is no announcement, no flourish, just the soft sound of porcelain meeting linen. People pick up cutlery without ceremony. Conversation resumes at low volume, unfolding slowly, like something being unwrapped with care. The food is simple, that is its strength. There is nourishment here, but not indulgence. Portions are generous enough to reassure without intimidating. Flavors are straightforward, confident, unwilling to argue. Everything tastes exactly as it should, which is to say, it does not demand reflection. No one pauses mid-bite to analyze. No one takes notes. This is a meal designed to be eaten. Across the table, a man cuts his food with methodical precision. Beside him, a woman sips from a glass of water, gazing absently toward one of the windows. Their conversation drifts in and out of focus, fragments of observation and mild commentary. Weather, travel times, the ship itself, topics that require no resolution. The room absorbs sound generously. Conversations overlap without clashing. Laughter remains soft, brief, and quickly contained. Even moments of humor behave themselves, rising slightly above the general murmur before settling back into it. There is something faintly ceremonial about all of this, though no one would describe it as such. The timing, the arrangement, the repetition. Meals aboard the ship occur not just to feed people, but to mark time. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, reliable divisions, in a day that might otherwise blur into motion. Here, time is sliced neatly and served with cutlery. You eat at an unhurried pace, not because you are trying to savor, but because there is no incentive to rush, no second sitting waiting impatiently, no sense that the room might close if you linger too long. Plates are cleared when you are finished, not before. Coffee arrives when requested, not as an assumption. The stewards seem to know exactly when to appear and when to retreat. They wait at the edges of vision, attentive without hovering. They remove empty plates with barely a sound. They refill glasses before they are entirely empty, as if scarcity has been politely banned. There is quiet humor in how carefully normal this all feels. You are dining in the middle of the ocean aboard a moving structure larger than most buildings you have ever entered, yet the experience resembles a well-run restaurant in a respectable city. The sea might as well not exist. It is acknowledged only by the occasional shifting light through the windows, the slow slide of water beyond the glass. Someone comments on how smooth the crossing feels. Someone else agrees. A third person nods without speaking. This observation seems to pass from table to table throughout the room, a shared reassurance. The ship is behaving. Everyone appreciates that. As courses progress, the room settles into a deeper rhythm. Plates arrive, plates depart. Glasses clink softly. Napkins are folded, unfolded, refolded. The ritual continues without variation, and that consistency is its own comfort. There are no speeches, no toasts, no moments set aside for emphasis. Even celebration here would likely be subdued, contained within polite applause or a raised glass that does not linger in the air too long. You notice how few people look at the clock. There is no need. The meal unfolds at a pace that feels complete in itself. When it ends, it will end naturally, not because time has run out, but because the ritual has reached its conclusion. Dessert arrives without fanfare, a simple sweetness, a closing note that does not attempt to overshadow what came before. Coffee follows, dark and steady, served hot and without delay. Cups are placed carefully, handles aligned. The room grows quieter as people finish eating. Conversations taper off, replaced by thoughtful silence. Some lean back in their chairs. Others sit upright, hands folded, as though waiting for a cue that does not come. Eventually, people begin to stand. Chairs slide back softly. Coats are adjusted. A few final words are exchanged. The room empties gradually, not all at once. No one rushes the exit. The stewards remain behind, already resetting the space. Tablecloths smoothed, cutlery aligned, glassware polished. The dining room prepares itself to be exactly the same the next time it is needed. You pause at the doorway and glance back once more. The light still pours in through the round windows. The tables stand ready, spotless and patient. The room looks untouched, as though the meal has been absorbed rather than experienced. This is what the ship does best. It takes the extraordinary crossing an ocean and disguises it as routine. It turns meals into markers of stability. It convinces you, if only for an hour, that nothing unexpected could possibly intrude. You step back into the corridor, carrying with you the quiet satisfaction of having been fed without drama. Behind you, the dining room remains, serene and prepared, waiting calmly for the next scheduled moment in the day. And beneath it all, the ship continues forward, steady and composed, holding its rituals together as carefully as it holds its course. Those at the table. The people who find themselves seated together do not arrive as a group. They arrive individually, one by one, drawn to the same stretch of white tablecloth by nothing more dramatic than assigned places and quiet habit. When they sit, there is no ceremony. Chairs are pulled out, napkins unfold, small adjustments are made to sleeves and posture. No one scans the table for opportunity. No one prepares an introduction speech. They are simply here together because the ship decided it was efficient. The first moments are defined by mild observation. A glance at the person opposite, a brief assessment of age, accent, clothing. These details are registered without comment, filed away without urgency. The ship is moving. The meal has begun. There is time. Conversation starts where conversation usually starts, when no one is trying to impress anyone. The weather is mentioned briefly and without conviction. The smoothness of the voyage is acknowledged again, as though repeating it might help maintain it. Someone notes the quality of the soup. Someone else agrees, and the subject is retired. These are not exchanges meant to be remembered. They are meant to function. The accents around the table vary, though no one points this out. Voices carry traces of different cities, different rhythms of speech. Some sentences move quickly, others take their time. No one rushes to match the pace of anyone else. The table accommodates variation without discomfort. A man speaks about his work, but only in outline, enough to explain where he has come from, not enough to invite further inquiry. A woman mentions a relative waiting at the other end of the journey. No names are given. The details remain abstract, as though everyone has agreed that specificity would be unnecessary. The ship encourages this restraint. It is difficult to boast when surrounded by so much engineered competence, difficult to exaggerate when even the walls seem unimpressed. Here, personal narratives are scaled to fit the environment. Modest, contained, polite. Meals repeat. Breakfast becomes lunch, lunch becomes dinner. Each time the same people appear, or nearly the same. Someone may be missing one day. Another person may take their place. The change is noted, then accepted. Over time, faces become familiar without becoming intimate. There is comfort in that. Conversation deepens not by design but by accumulation. Stories return with slight additions. A comment made one evening is referenced casually the next. A preference is remembered. Coffee with milk, tea without. Small acts of attention, unnoticed in isolation, begin to stack. Someone laughs more easily than before. Someone interrupts less. Silences stretch without discomfort. The table begins to function as a unit, not through effort, but through repetition. There is something faintly ironic about how strangers become recognizable without ever becoming known. You learn how people eat before you learn what they believe. You notice who finishes their plate, who leaves food behind, who eats quickly as if meals are an obligation, who lingers as if time might be extended by chewing slowly. These observations feel safer than questions. The ship seems to prefer it this way. A man across from you tells the same anecdote twice over the course of 2 meals. The second time he shortens it. The punchline is not emphasized. It no longer needs to be. The table remembers it. That is enough. Someone else listens more than they speak. When they do speak, it is briefly, often with dry humor that passes unnoticed at first. Later, someone smiles at the memory of it. This, too, is noted internally and not discussed. The conversations remain rooted in the everyday. Trains, houses, the difficulty of packing, the oddities of travel. These topics float comfortably above deeper waters. No one dives. No one suggests diving. The surface holds. There is a quiet agreement here that this is not the place for transformation. It is a place for continuity, for passing time together without demanding significance from it. The irony, of course, is that significance accumulates anyway. By the fourth or fifth meal, greetings become unnecessary. Eye contact replaces words, a nod, a slight smile. The ritual of sitting down together becomes automatic. The table feels incomplete if someone is late. A chair remains empty longer than expected one evening. Someone glances toward it, then away. When its occupant finally arrives, slightly breathless, there is a collective easing that no one acknowledges. The meal resumes its usual rhythm. Stories begin to overlap. A comment from one person sparks a memory in another. The connection is made gently, without enthusiasm. The table listens, then moves on. No one claims the moment. It passes into the shared background. You begin to recognize patterns in speech, phrases that recur, pauses that signal thought rather than hesitation. These are learned gradually, without effort, the way one learns the layout of a familiar street. There is light humor at the table, but it behaves itself. A raised eyebrow, a dry remark delivered without emphasis, laughter that fades quickly as if embarrassed by its own volume. No one tells jokes designed to dominate the room. The ship does not reward that behavior. Instead, it rewards consistency, presence, the willingness to show up repeatedly and behave more or less the same each time. Over days, this proves sufficient to create something resembling familiarity. You realize at some point that you could describe these people fairly accurately and yet know very little about them. Their professions remain vague, their histories untouched, their opinions mostly unspoken. And still, they have become part of the landscape of your days. This realization is oddly soothing. The table becomes a fixed point in a moving world. No matter where the ship is geographically, this grouping of chairs and faces remains stable. It is something you can count on, even if you cannot define it. Meals end and the group disperses. Chairs slide back. Napkins are folded. Goodbyes are exchanged without ceremony. See you later. See you tomorrow. The words carry no weight, but they are always true. You encounter these same people in corridors, on staircases, near railings. Encounters are brief. A nod, a comment about the weather. Nothing more is required. The table has already done its work. There is something faintly amusing about how the ship orchestrates these relationships without drawing attention to itself. Assignments made once ripple outward across days, shaping routines, creating familiarity out of nothing more than proximity and time. No one sets out to make friends, and yet by the end of the journey, there will be names remembered, habits recognized, absences felt. Not deeply, not painfully, just enough to register. The table continues to gather its occupants, meal after meal, holding them in a quiet arrangement that asks very little and provides just enough. In the grand design of the ship, this is a small thing, a logistical detail, a matter of seating. But for those who return to it each day, it becomes part of the rhythm that makes the voyage feel manageable. A reminder that even in transit, even among strangers, routine can create something steady. You take your seat again, unfolding your napkin without thinking about it. Across from you, familiar faces look up. No one says anything important. And for now, that is exactly what is needed. The elevator and the rhythm of life. The elevator does not look like a miracle. That is its first success. It stands quietly at the end of a corridor, doors closed, polished but unassuming, as though it has always been there and sees no reason to draw attention to itself now. There are no crowds gathered around it. No one treats it as a spectacle. Most people walk past it without a second glance, which is precisely the point. This is technology that has already been normalized. When the doors slide open, they do so with smooth restraint. No shudder, no complaint, just a measured movement that reveals a compact space lined with wood paneling and soft light. The floor inside is clean, the brass fixtures warm to the touch. Everything has been arranged to reassure rather than astonish. A young attendant stands inside, posture upright, hands resting lightly near the controls. He is dressed neatly, uniform pressed, expression neutral, in the practiced way of someone who has learned that reliability is a performance. He nods as passengers step in, asking quietly where they wish to go, though the question feels almost ceremonial. The answer rarely surprises him. Up, down, the middle decks. He presses a lever with controlled precision, and the elevator begins to move. The sensation is subtle, a gentle shift, barely perceptible. If you are not watching the floor indicator, you might miss the fact that you are changing levels at all. This is movement designed to be forgotten, even as it happens. Passengers glance around with mild curiosity. For many, this is their first time inside a ship's elevator. Some smile faintly, as though acknowledging a novelty they have already decided to accept. Others remain impassive, unwilling to grant the moment any particular significance. The attendant remains still, eyes forward, his presence anchoring the space. He rides up and down all day, marking time not by hours but by floors. He has likely memorized the ship vertically in the same way others have memorized its corridors horizontally. He knows where people tend to go, which decks are busiest at which times, who hesitates before stepping in. He does not comment. The elevator stops, the doors open, passengers step out, nodding in thanks or not at all. The attendant acknowledges each response with the same calm expression. The doors close again. Downward now. Another group enters. A couple, perhaps, their curiosity visible in the way they glance at the control panel. They exchange a look that says, "Why not?" The attendant waits for their instruction, though he already knows where they are going. He always does. As the elevator descends, the ship continues its steady progress through the sea, unconcerned with this small vertical journey occurring within it. Two motions layered on top of each other, both smooth, both dependable, the larger one invisible, the smaller one contained. There is something faintly amusing about the effort involved in making this feel effortless. Cables, counterweights, motors, all concealed behind walls that prefer not to be questioned. Electricity flowing where it is needed, not where it might impress. The elevator does not ask passengers to admire it. It simply works. This is how the ship has been organized. Every system exists to reduce friction. Every process has been designed to operate without instruction. The elevator is not an exception. It is a statement. Movement made manageable. Vertical distance neutralized. Passengers ride out of curiosity at first. They want to experience it, to confirm that it exists, that it does what it promises. Some take it once and return to the stairs satisfied. Others begin to use it regularly, drawn to the convenience without quite admitting it. There is no judgment either way. The attendant remains. He greets familiar faces throughout the day, though he does not acknowledge familiarity. A nod, a quiet good morning, a pause to allow someone to enter. He is part of the machinery now, as essential as the cables above and below. Human presence woven into mechanical rhythm. Time behaves differently around the elevator. People arrive in small groups, disperse, reassemble. The flow is steady but unpredictable. No rush hours exactly, just patterns that emerge through repetition. Morning traffic upward, afternoon movement downward. Evening circulation as people drift between spaces without urgency. The elevator becomes a point of observation. Inside its walls, brief interactions occur, snippets of conversation, a comment about the smoothness of the ride, a mild joke delivered without expectation of laughter, a shared silence that feels surprisingly comfortable given the closeness of the space. The attendant hears them all and responds to none. He presses the lever. The elevator moves. The rhythm continues. Outside in the corridors, people adjust their routines around this vertical option. Some plan their movements to include it. Others continue to use stairs, preferring the familiarity of steps and railings. The ship allows both without preference. This flexibility contributes to the sense that everything is under control. You notice how little attention anyone pays to the systems that support them. The elevator opens and closes dozens of times an hour, and each time it delivers exactly what is expected. No one applauds, no one worries. The absence of failure has become the baseline. This perhaps is the most unsettling part. Reliability breeds trust, and trust encourages forgetfulness. People stop noticing the mechanisms that carry them. They stop thinking about how many things must continue to work in order for their day to unfold as planned. The ship has made complexity invisible. You ride the elevator again later, this time with a different group. A man adjusts his hat. A woman holds a small bag against her side. Someone clears their throat. The attendant waits for instruction, then moves the lever. The elevator glides upward. You watch the indicator shift, marking progress in simple increments. Each floor passes without resistance. The journey feels shorter than it should, not because it is fast, but because it is smooth. When the doors open, the corridor beyond looks exactly as it should. No sense of having arrived somewhere extraordinary, Just another part of the ship already functioning, already prepared. The attendant nods. You step out. Behind you, the doors close, and the elevator resumes its quiet service, carrying more passengers through its contained vertical world. The ship continues to hum around it, systems layered within systems, all aligned toward the same goal, making movement feel like stillness. This is the rhythm of life aboard the ship, not marked by drama or decision, but by repetition, by small transitions that accumulate into days, by machines that do not demand recognition and people who have learned to trust them. The elevator rises, the elevator falls, the attendant remains at his post, and the ship, organized with meticulous care, moves steadily onward, asking nothing more of its passengers than that they step inside, stay to floor, and allow the mechanism to do the rest. The deck and the sea air. The deck does not wait for permission to exist. It opens itself without ceremony, a wide horizontal pause in the ship's long, carefully managed interior. One step through the door and the rules change. Walls retreat. Ceilings vanish. The ship loosens its grip slightly, just enough to let the outside remind you that it has always been there. The air arrives first. Cool, steady, unmistakably real. It moves across the deck without agenda, touching coats, hair, exposed hands, then continuing on its way. It carries the scent of salt and distance, stripped of ornament. No polish here, no upholstery. Just wind doing exactly what wind has done long before it learned to be observed. The sea stretches outward in every direction, flat enough to feel intentional, a surface so expansive it resists description. Gray-blue, layered, quietly textured, it does not sparkle for attention. It does not darken for drama. It simply extends, uninterrupted, until the concept of an edge feels unnecessary. People step onto the deck and instinctively slow down. There is nothing here that responds well to haste. The ship may be moving, but the deck encourages stillness. Chairs are arranged along the railings, angled toward the horizon rather than toward one another. They are practical chairs, foldable, efficient, designed to support watching rather than conversation. Blankets rest neatly folded over their backs. Woolen, thick, ready, offered not because conditions demand them, but because conditions might. This, too, feels like part of the ship's philosophy: anticipation without alarm, comfort without fuss. Passengers settle into chairs with small adjustments. A blanket is lifted, shaken once, then draped carefully. Someone tucks it around their legs with the quiet seriousness of a ritual. Another person leaves it folded, undecided, as though accepting it too quickly might feel presumptuous. People sit side by side without interacting. On the deck, proximity does not imply engagement. Everyone faces outward toward the water, toward the horizon that refuses to explain itself. Conversation, if it occurs at all, happens in fragments. A brief comment about the air, a mild observation about the weather. Then silence resumes its position. The ship moves beneath your feet, though the motion is barely perceptible. A subtle forward intention, like a thought, not fully formed. The deck remains stable enough that you could forget movement entirely if the sea were not sliding past so steadily. You rest your hands on the railing. The metal is cool, firm, reassuring. It vibrates faintly with the ship's internal effort, a reminder that something enormous is happening below decks, even if the surface remains calm. Engineering hums quietly beneath elegance, content to be unnoticed. The horizon holds everyone's attention without demanding it. People stare at it not because they expect to see something, but because it gives them permission not to. Eyes soften, shoulders drop. Thoughts stretch out and lose their urgency. The sea does not offer narrative. It offers duration. This is time without milestones. A man adjusts his hat and leans back, closing his eyes. A woman wraps her blanket more tightly and watches the water with steady focus, as though trying to memorize a pattern that refuses to repeat. A couple sits together close enough to share warmth but not speaking. Their silence feels cooperative rather than strained. No one appears bored. That, perhaps, is the most curious thing. On land, inactivity often demands justification. Here, it does not. The deck reframes stillness as participation. Sitting becomes an acceptable occupation. Watching becomes sufficient. There is a faint humor in how seriously people take this. They sit with the posture of witnesses, as though the sea might do something remarkable at any moment, as though the horizon might shift or reveal a secret if observed with enough patience. It never does. And yet no one seems disappointed. The ship has trained them well. The wind lifts slightly, then settles. Blankets are adjusted. Coats are buttoned, unbuttoned. These small movements punctuate the larger stillness without breaking it. The deck absorbs these gestures and returns to calm. A steward passes through occasionally, moving quietly, checking that chairs are secure, that nothing has drifted where it shouldn't. He does not interrupt anyone. His presence is brief, efficient, nearly invisible. The deck belongs to the passengers now. Some people pace slowly along the rail, steps measured, eyes scanning the water, as though counting something invisible. Others remain seated, anchored, content to let the world move while they do not. There is no activity schedule posted here. No suggested duration for watching the sea, no optimal vantage point. The deck offers itself without instruction, trusting passengers to discover its purpose on their own. Most seem to understand instinctively. This is not a place for accomplishment. It is a place for allowance. The sky above remains undecided. Cloud cover drifts lazily, opening and closing patches of light that slide across the water in wide, unhurried shapes. Sunlight touches the deck briefly, then moves on. No one follows it. You notice how conversations dissolve rather than end. A sentence begins, trails off, and is not completed. The listener does not prompt, the speaker does not apologize. Words simply lose relevance here. The sea accepts their absence without comment. Time stretches. Minutes pass without markers. There are no bells, no announcements, no cues to re-enter the ship. Eventually people rise when they feel like it, or they stay seated longer than expected. Both choices feel equally valid. Someone laughs quietly at something remembered rather than said. The sound drifts away almost immediately, carried off by the wind. It leaves no echo. The deck remains composed. There is something gently ironic about how this open space feels more controlled than the ship's interior. Inside systems manage comfort, invisibly. Out here, comfort is negotiated directly with the elements, and yet the experience feels equally stable. Perhaps more so. The sea does not surprise anyone today. It maintains its composure, matching the ship's own restrained confidence. Together they perform a kind of agreement movement without urgency, scale without spectacle. People begin to leave the deck gradually, not because anything has changed, but because nothing has. A chair creaks softly as someone stands. A blanket is folded with care and placed back over the armrest. Gloves are slipped on, scarves adjusted. Each departure is quiet, respectful, as though leaving might disturb those who remain. The deck does not empty all at once, it thins. Those who stay appear increasingly still, more integrated into the space. Their outlines soften against the horizon. They look less like passengers and more like fixtures, temporarily installed along the rail. Eventually you stand as well. The railing releases your hands. The wind follows you for a few steps, then stays behind. As you move toward the door, the sounds of the interior grow louder. Footsteps, voices, the muffled hum of life contained. You pause once more, turning back. The sea remains unchanged. The horizon still holds its line. The deck waits, patient, ready to receive the next person who needs nothing more than a place to sit and watch time pass without interference. You step inside. Behind you, the door closes softly, sealing the open world away. The ship resumes its gentle hold, carrying you forward while the deck continues to offer what it always has: space, air, and permission to do nothing at all. The pause at port. The ship slows without announcing that it intends to do so. There is no dramatic shift, no collective intake of breath. Movement simply becomes more deliberate, as if the vessel has decided that haste would be unnecessary for a while. The sea responds politely, adjusting its rhythm to match. Together they arrive at a moment of pause that feels less like stopping and more like waiting. From the deck, land appears not suddenly, not impressively, but gradually, like a thought forming in the distance. A line where water gives way to structure. Buildings that look solid precisely because they do not move. The ship approaches with the calm confidence of something that expects cooperation rather than resistance. Passengers gather without urgency. Some lean against the railings, hands folded, watching the port draw closer. Others remain seated, trusting that whatever needs to be seen will eventually make itself obvious. There is curiosity, certainly, but it is restrained. No one presses forward. No one narrates the approach. This is not arrival. It is interruption. The engines ease into a quieter register. Their steady hum softens, though it never fully disappears. Even at rest, the ship prefers to remain prepared. Power is not withdrawn. It is simply held. Small boats appear alongside, efficient and unremarkable. They move with practiced precision, their purpose clear enough that no explanation feels necessary. Crew members guide them into position with gestures that are economical, almost casual. This has been done before, many times. The transfer begins. New passengers arrive in small groups, stepping aboard with careful attention to their footing. They look around with the alertness of people who have not yet learned to trust the ship. Their eyes take in details quickly: railings, decks, crew uniforms searching for reassurance. They carry themselves slightly differently, as though still anchored to the world they have just left. The ship receives them politely. There is no fanfare, no acknowledgement beyond the necessary instructions. The vessel does not change its posture to accommodate newcomers. It does not introduce itself. It simply continues being exactly what it is, allowing others to adapt. Luggage follows. Crates, trunks, bags lifted past. arranged with methodical care, each piece handled as though it matters but not as though it might cause trouble. Tags are checked, lists consulted, items disappear into the ship's interior, absorbed into systems that already know where they belong. Mail arrives as well. Canvas sacks heavy with letters, parcels wrapped in brown paper, tied neatly with string. These are carried aboard with particular attention, as though their contents hold a different kind of weight. Words written days or weeks earlier now find themselves in motion again, passing through hands that have no interest in reading them. The ship does not linger over this exchange. It treats communication as cargo important but procedural. Passengers watch the process with mild interest. Some speculate quietly about who might be joining them. Others glance at the mailbags with a faint, unspoken hope, as though a letter addressed to them might materialize through sheer proximity. Most do not expect anything. The pause stretches comfortably. Time here behaves differently than it does during movement. Without forward progress, minutes feel more distinct, easier to notice. People shift positions. Conversations begin and end without momentum. The ship seems content to let this interval unfold at its own pace. A few passengers disembark. Their departure is even quieter than the arrival of others. They step down into the waiting boats with careful movements, carrying belongings that now feel familiar rather than provisional. No one waves dramatically. Goodbyes are exchanged in low voices, if at all. The separation is treated as a matter of logistics rather than emotion. The ship does not react. It holds its position balanced and patient, as though confident that everyone who needs to be here will eventually be accounted for. There is no sense of anticipation, no visible checklist ticking toward completion. The process unfolds as long as it needs to, then moves on. Crew members circulate with quiet efficiency. They check lines, exchange brief comments, adjust small details that passengers never notice. Their familiarity with this routine shows in their posture. No wasted movement, no hesitation. The ship relies on this competence without drawing attention to it. The port itself remains strangely distant. Buildings sit along the shoreline, solid and immobile, offering little in the way of invitation. There is no temptation to romanticize this place. It exists to facilitate exchange, not experience. The ship seems aware of this and does not attempt to embellish. A man nearby remarks that the stop feels brief. Another disagrees, suggesting it has lasted longer than expected. Neither statement carries much conviction. Without schedules visible, time becomes subjective. The ship does not correct anyone. Eventually, the small boats withdraw. They pull away cleanly, their work completed without ceremony. The gap between ship and shore widens again, returning water to its previous uninterrupted state. The port begins to recede, its details flattening into abstraction. The ship remains still for a moment longer. This pause feels deliberate, a breath held, systems recalibrating, orders confirmed. Nothing visible changes, yet everything is quietly preparing to resume. Then, almost imperceptibly, motion returns. The engines deepen their tone. The deck vibrates faintly beneath your feet. Water along the hull begins to slide past again, slowly at first, then with growing certainty. The ship does not rush to leave. It simply resumes what it had been doing before, as though the interruption never occurred. Passengers disperse. Those who had gathered drift back into corridors, cabins, lounges. Conversations resume where they left off, or begin anew, informed only slightly by the pause that has just passed. The newcomers begin their own process of adjustment, learning the ship's rhythms by observation rather than instruction. Mail is sorted below decks. Letters begin their journey through corridors and staircases, moving closer to hands that may or may not be waiting for them. The ship carries these private connections without comment, treating them as another form of cargo that must reach its destination. From the deck, the port fades into distance. It does not linger in memory. It was never meant to. The ship's world closes around itself again, re-establishing the familiar boundaries of railings, decks, and open sea. The horizon returns to its uninterrupted line. There is something faintly ironic about how little changes. A stop that involved dozens of people, countless objects, and careful coordination leaves almost no trace. The ship feels the same as it did before. Its routines remain intact, its atmosphere unchanged. This is its strength. It absorbs interruption without disruption. It allows movement without drama. It acknowledges the outside world only long enough to exchange what is necessary, then turns back to its own internal order. You realize with mild surprise that the pause has made the ship feel more complete rather than less. It has demonstrated its ability to stop without losing itself, to wait without uncertainty, to resume without apology. The sea stretches ahead once more. Passengers settle back into their routines, barely commenting on the interruption that has just occurred. Meals will arrive on schedule, music will drift through corridors, chairs will face the horizon, elevators will glide between decks. The ship continues forward steady and composed, carrying with it the subtle knowledge that it can pause when required and move on without hesitation. The port disappears behind you. The journey continues. A quiet afternoon. The afternoon does not announce itself. It simply settles in. After lunch, the ship exhales. Corridors that were briefly animated soften into stillness. Footsteps grow infrequent. Voices lower without anyone suggesting they should. The vessel seems to understand that this hour requires restraint, and everyone quietly agrees to follow its lead. Passengers drift back toward familiar spaces. The library fills first, though never completely. Chairs are claimed with an unspoken courtesy. No one rushes. A book is selected, then reconsidered, then selected again. Some volumes are opened with purpose, others more out of habit than intention. Reading here is rarely urgent. Pages turn slowly, sometimes not at all. A man settles into an armchair by the window and reads the same paragraph 3 times without progressing. He does not notice. The book remains open, but his attention has shifted elsewhere, toward the faint vibration beneath the floor, toward the steady light, filtering through the glass. The text is present but optional. This is how the afternoon works. Elsewhere, passengers choose rest over engagement. Cabin doors close softly. Curtains are adjusted just enough to soften the light. Shoes are removed, then put back on, then removed again. Lying down becomes an experiment rather than a commitment. Some nap briefly. Others lie still without sleeping, allowing the hours to pass over them like weather. Time stretches here, but not dramatically. It does not slow to make a point. It simply loses definition. Without appointments or obligations, minutes blur together. The ship does not mark this period with bells or announcements. It allows the afternoon to remain unstructured. In the reading rooms, pens move intermittently. Letters are started, paused, and sometimes abandoned. A sentence is written, crossed out, rewritten. Another is added, then left unfinished. The paper does not object. The ship does not insist on completion. Words are allowed to exist in a provisional state. Some passengers stare out the windows instead. The ocean offers very little variation, which is precisely its appeal. Gray water, low swell, distant horizon. Nothing approaches. Nothing retreats. Watching it requires no interpretation. The eye rests easily on its surface, finding comfort in repetition. A woman closes her book after 10 minutes and places it face down on the table. She does not look disappointed. The act feels complete even without resolution. Reading, like everything else this afternoon, is allowed to end wherever it happens to stop. The ship hums beneath it all. The engines continue their steady rhythm, unchanged by the hour. They do not work harder in the afternoon. They do not relax. They simply persist, providing a constant backdrop that becomes almost imperceptible. The sound fades into awareness, only when it briefly stops being noticed. It is the closest thing to silence the ship offers. In the corridors, stewards move quietly, attending to small tasks that do not require attention. A chair is adjusted. A tray is removed. A window latch is checked. These actions are performed without drawing the eye. Efficiency here is defined by invisibility. Passengers rarely acknowledge them and no one takes offense. Afternoon conversations are brief and unambitious. A comment about the weather, a remark on how comfortable the chairs are, an observation that the ship feels particularly steady today. These statements invite agreement, not discussion. They are designed to pass time gently rather than occupy it fully. When conversation falters, no one rushes to revive it. Silence is not treated as absence. It is treated as a condition. Some passengers walk the corridors slowly, not with purpose, but with curiosity. They revisit spaces already explored, confirming their familiarity. The ship is becoming knowable now. Turns are remembered. Staircases feel less mysterious. Getting lost no longer feels likely. This growing sense of orientation brings its own quiet satisfaction. In cabins, personal items are rearranged without necessity. A hat is moved from chair to hook. A book is placed closer to the bed. A letter is folded, unfolded, then folded again. These gestures give the impression of control even when nothing requires managing. The afternoon encourages such small rituals. Outside, the deck remains open but subdued. Fewer people choose the wind now. Those who do stand briefly, then retreat. The sea looks the same as it did earlier, and earlier still. It has not changed its expression. That is the point. Back inside, the light shifts, almost imperceptibly. The angle softens. Shadows lengthen, though no one remarks on it. The ship accommodates this change without ceremony. Electric lights remain off where possible, as though respecting the natural progression of the day. A passenger glances at a clock and is mildly surprised by the time. The hour feels both longer and shorter than expected. He does not attempt to resolve this contradiction. Afternoons at sea are not meant to be understood. Books close more often now, not because they are finished, but because holding them has become unnecessary. Some passengers rest their hands in their laps, doing nothing at all. This inactivity is not treated as idleness. It is treated as participation. You begin to notice how little effort is required to exist here. No decisions need to be made. Meals will arrive when they are meant to. Evening will follow. Afternoon, whether anyone prepares for it or not. The ship handles transitions on behalf of its passengers, relieving them of the responsibility to anticipate what comes next. There is a faint irony in how carefully everything has been arranged to allow people to disengage. Luxury, in this context, is not excess. It is the removal of urgency. A man dozes lightly in his chair, waking occasionally only to adjust his position. Each time he opens his eyes, the room looks the same. Nothing has been missed. This reassures him enough to close them again. Nearby, a woman finishes her letter at last. She reads it once, folds it neatly, and places it in her bag. She does not appear relieved. Completion here does not carry weight. It is simply another state an activity can reach. The ship continues forward. You are aware of motion only in the most abstract sense. The horizon outside the windows changes too slowly to register. The floor remains steady. Objects do not shift. The illusion of stillness is convincing enough that you briefly forget you are moving at all. This is intentional. The afternoon was designed to feel inevitable, predictable, exactly as expected. Nothing surprising is meant to occur here. Nothing memorable is being created. This is not an oversight. It is a feature. In the absence of events, attention turns inward. Thoughts wander without direction. Memories surface briefly, then dissolve. Plans are considered, then dismissed. The mind adopts the same unhurried rhythm as the ship, moving forward without urgency. A bell rings faintly somewhere below decks. It is not loud enough to disrupt the atmosphere. It simply reminds you that structure still exists, even if it remains in the background. As the hour draws toward its end, there is no sense of conclusion. The afternoon does not resolve. It simply gives way. Passengers begin to stir slightly, more from habit than intention. A book is placed back on its shelf. A jacket is retrieved. Someone stretches and stands, testing the feeling of movement after prolonged stillness. The ship does not rush them. It has all evening ahead. The quiet afternoon lingers in the air, leaving behind no distinct memory, only a general impression of ease. Later, when the day is recalled, this hour may be forgotten entirely, or remembered only as a sensation, rather than a sequence of events. And that is sufficient. The afternoon has done its work. It has carried the passengers forward without demanding attention, allowing time to pass exactly as promised. Calm, predictable, unremarkable. The ship moves on, steady and untroubled, into whatever comes next. The elegant evening. Evening does not arrive suddenly on the ship. It is assembled. Somewhere below decks, preparations begin long before passengers are aware of them. Tables are aligned, chairs adjusted by a few careful inches, linens smoothed until no crease suggests haste. Nothing about the process feels urgent. The evening meal is not treated as a deadline, but as a transition that must be approached correctly. Passengers respond in kind. Cabins fill with small, deliberate movements. Jackets are retrieved and brushed. Collars are straightened, then straightened again. Shoes that have been perfectly adequate all day are reconsidered, briefly rejected, then accepted after all. Mirrors receive more attention than they strictly require, not because anyone intends to impress, but because evening has rules and the rules are familiar, the lighting shifts as though on cue. Electric lamps glow warmer now, softening edges and forgiving details. Wood surfaces deepen in color. Corridors appear quieter, even when they are not. The ship understands that brightness would be inappropriate at this hour. Illumination is present, but restrained. Dinner does not begin with an announcement. People simply begin to arrive. The dining room fills gradually. No one rushes to be first. Assigned seats remove competition entirely. The ritual is predictable, and that predictability is comforting. Jackets are hung, chairs turn slightly as people sit, napkins are unfolded with the practiced motion of those who have done this many times before, even if not always on a ship. Conversation starts softly and stays that way. Voices rarely rise above the background hum. Sentences are complete but not ambitious. Comments about the food, the day, the comfort of the ship. Observations rather than opinions. No one attempts to dominate the table. This is not a place for speeches. The food arrives in courses, each one waiting patiently for the previous to be finished. There is variety, certainly, but not extravagance for its own sake. Plates are arranged carefully, portions are reasonable, the service is slow enough to be noticeable, but never frustrating. The pace is intentional, as if the ship is quietly reminding everyone that there is no reason to hurry. Between courses, time expands. Glasses are lifted, set down, lifted again. A fork rests momentarily on the edge of a plate as someone listens rather than eats. A small smile appears, then fades. The evening encourages these pauses. It does not reward efficiency. Music drifts in from somewhere nearby. Not loud enough to demand attention, not quiet enough to disappear entirely. It occupies the space between conversations, smoothing transitions. No one applauds. No one comments on the selection. The music exists to fill silence without replacing it. The irony is subtle, but present. This carefully constructed elegance is meant to feel natural. Effort has been expended precisely so that effort will not be noticed. The illusion works. Most passengers accept the atmosphere without examining how much planning it required. Dinner conversation rarely continues beyond the table. People speak to those directly beside them, occasionally across, but not often beyond that. The room contains many small conversations rather than a single collective mood. When a topic fades, it is allowed to end. No one rescues it. Laughter, when it appears, is brief. It does not echo. It does not demand acknowledgement. It passes through the room and dissolves into the hum of voices and clinking cutlery. The ship absorbs it easily. Dessert arrives without ceremony. It is received with polite interest rather than enthusiasm. Plates are admired briefly, then accepted. Sweets at sea are less about indulgence and more about closure. The meal needs an ending, and this is it. Coffee follows. Cups are smaller now, movements slower. People lean back slightly in their chairs, signaling that the evening has reached a different phase. There is no rush to leave, but no one intends to linger indefinitely. The room feels complete. At neighboring tables, conversations taper off naturally. Someone glances at a watch, then decides it does not matter. Another adjusts their jacket as though preparing to stand, then continues sitting. The ship does not pressure anyone to choose. Eventually, people begin to rise. Chairs slide back with muted sounds. Napkins are folded, not carefully, but adequately. Good evenings are exchanged with soft nods rather than extended farewells. The evening meal has served its purpose. It does not require a finale. Outside the dining room, corridors welcome passengers back into their quieter rhythm. The lighting remains warm, the air feels settled, music fades further into the background. Some head toward lounges, others toward the smoking room or the library or their cabins. No path feels more correct than another. The ship accommodates all of them. There is a sense, faint but perceptible, that the most active part of the day has passed. Not because anything exhausting occurred, but because energy has been intentionally dispersed. The evening is designed to slow people down without explicitly telling them to do so. Even elegance here is practical. It occupies the passengers gently, keeping them engaged just enough that they do not notice time passing. By the time they realize the hour, it has already moved on. Later, when the day is remembered, this evening will blur together with others. There will be no single remark that stands out, no dramatic exchange, no unforgettable dish. And that is precisely the point. The evening was never meant to be remembered individually. It was meant to reinforce a feeling. That feeling lingers. Warmth, order, predictability, a sense that everything is proceeding exactly as planned. The ship continues forward, carrying its passengers through another carefully constructed hour, wrapped in soft light and modest conversation. Nothing is demanded. Nothing is rushed. The elegant evening settles quietly into memory, making room for whatever comes next. Night aboard the ship. Night does not fall on the ship. It is dialed down. Lights soften first. Not all at once, not dramatically, but gradually, as if the vessel is easing itself into a lower register. Corridors that were warm and bright an hour ago now glow more discreetly. Shadows return to corners that had been politely ignored during the day. The ship does not go dark. It simply decides that visibility no longer needs to be ambitious. Passengers respond instinctively. Doors open and close with care. Footsteps slow. Conversations shrink to murmurs and then to nods. Jackets that were worn for dinner are folded away. Shoes are placed where they can be found in the morning without thought. The rituals are small, repetitive, and oddly reassuring. Cabins become private worlds again. Inside lamps cast tight circles of light over books, letters, and half-finished thoughts. Some passengers read a few more pages, not because they are invested, but because stopping feels too abrupt. Others sit quietly on the edge of their beds, listening to the ship, letting the day loosen its grip. The walls hold sound well at night. The low, steady rhythm of the engines remains constant, a presence rather than a noise. It does not intrude, it supports, like breathing that continues whether or not anyone notices. You can feel it more than hear it, a subtle reassurance that movement has not stopped, just because attention has. Stewards make their final rounds. Their movements are economical, practiced. A glance here, a door checked there. A quiet adjustment to something that did not strictly need adjusting but will be better for it in the morning. They move with the confidence of people who know exactly where they are supposed to be at this hour. No one thanks them. Not out of rudeness, but because the ship has trained everyone to accept stability as the default. Comfort arrives without announcement. Maintenance happens invisibly. The night runs on these unacknowledged efforts. In the corridors, the last few passengers drift toward their cabins. Some pause briefly at windows, looking out into darkness that reveals nothing in return. The sea is present but unseen. Stars may be overhead, but the glass reflects only the interior lights and a tired face staring back. There is no scenery to interpret. The outside world has temporarily withdrawn. This suits the ship just fine. Cabin doors close one by one, each click slightly muffled, as though the vessel is absorbing sound on purpose. Eventually, even those sounds fade. The corridors reach a state that can only be described as settled. Inside the cabins, routines repeat. Water splashes softly into basins. Towels are hung with care that suggests habit rather than necessity. Beds are prepared with familiar gestures. Sheets are pulled back. Pillows adjusted, then adjusted again, because perfection is always one movement away. Some passengers lie down immediately. Others remain awake, staring at the ceiling, letting their thoughts wander without urgency. The day replays itself in fragments. A conversation, a meal, a view that no longer exists. None of it demands resolution. The night is not interested in conclusions. The ship continues forward. It does so without ceremony, without asking for attention. Navigation happens elsewhere. Decisions are made beyond the reach of sleeping passengers. The vessel does not consult them. It does not need reassurance. There is a faint irony in how much trust has been engineered into this experience. Passengers surrender awareness gladly. They do not track speed or direction. They do not calculate distance traveled while they sleep. They accept, without question, that the ship will handle these matters on their behalf. And it does. Somewhere below, systems hum and pulse. Pressure is regulated, temperatures maintained. Everything required to keep the night unremarkable remains in motion. The ship does not sleep. It simply pretends to, allowing its passengers the illusion of complete rest. In a cabin, a light clicks off. Darkness fills the space, but not completely. The faint glow from the corridor seeps in beneath the door, enough to suggest that the world has not vanished entirely, enough to prevent disorientation. Breathing slows. The body adjusts to the gentle, almost imperceptible movement. The sensation of being carried becomes familiar, then fades into the background. Muscles release tension they did not realize they were holding. Sleep arrives unevenly. Some drift under quickly, thoughts dissolving without resistance. Others hover at the edge, aware but detached, caught in that narrow space where consciousness loosens but does not disappear. The ship accommodates both states equally. Outside the cabins, night deepens. The decks are empty now. Chairs sit unused, facing a horizon they cannot see. The wind moves freely across surfaces without encountering human presence. The ocean slides past the hull, unseen and uninterpreted. The ship does not comment. It has no need to dramatize the darkness. It has crossed nights like this before, many of them. This one is not special. That is what makes it effective. Hours pass without being counted. Clocks tick quietly, but no one checks them. Time continues its work without witnesses. The ship maintains its course, correcting itself subtly, constantly, in ways that will never be noticed by those asleep. Inside a cabin, someone turns over, sheets rustle, a breath catches, then evens out. The movement is small, contained, absorbed by the room. The night does not react. The engines maintain their rhythm. They do not accelerate. They do not slow. Consistency is the priority. The ship values predictability over speed, steadiness over drama. This philosophy extends into the night, shaping it into something reliable rather than remarkable. By now, most passengers are fully asleep. Dreams begin to form, though they will not be remembered. Images drift in and out without structure. Familiar places appear briefly, then dissolve. The mind uses the quiet to reorganize itself. The ship allows this. It carries bodies and thoughts alike, holding them in motion while pretending nothing is happening. The illusion is convincing. The night feels static, even though miles pass beneath the keel. Everything remains in its intended state. Lights stay dim, corridors stay empty, doors stay closed, systems stay balanced. The ship does not improvise at night, it preserves. Toward morning, long before anyone wakes, the vessel will begin its subtle transition back toward day. But that is still hours away. For now, there is only this. The night continues, smooth and uninterrupted. The ship moves forward through darkness with quiet certainty, asking nothing of its passengers except that they rest. And they do. The state of calm holds, unbroken, until morning decides it is time to return.